Donald Trump came to Waco for a singular reason: to preach a gospel of political violence. He knows what the place means. At this moment in time, looking at the polls, he is the front runner. How could that possibly be? How could a man who incited insurrection, who lied 30,000 times, and who now openly preaches violence, division, and civil war, how could he be the leading candidate for the Republican nominee for president?
Good question.
Whatever it may be, it should be taken seriously because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour. He is filled with rage.
You all know where I'm going with
vengeance
this.
in his heart.
He's full of rage, vengeance in his heart.
That should scare every American.
That should scare everyone.
It certainly scares me.
Now, I don't know who this person is, Steve Schmidt, and I don't say it like I'm something special. I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, and I'm supposed to know who this person is. Steve Schmidt. All that I can tell you is, I've got the same Adam Schiff jokes going through my head. Like Schmidt for brains, or up Schmidt Creek, or this guy's needs to get his Schmidt together. I don't know who the person is, and whether or not I should, but I know confession through projection when I see it, and I felt compelled to make a little montage, like a Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin-esque Akilah Hughes remix. Because when someone says that their word, look out for your enemy, their words are getting more and more extreme. They're getting dangerous. Oh my goodness. Let's just hear my remix.
Because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour.
Dangerous and extreme.
He's filled with rage. Because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour. He has vengeance in his heart. Because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour. And that should scare every American. Because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour. How could a man who incited insurrection, more extreme, who lied 30,000 times, more extreme, and who now openly preaches violence, division, and civil war, because Donald Trump's words are becoming more dangerous and more extreme by the hour. Because Donald Trump's words are becoming...
Okay, hold on a second. Apparently Jenna didn't get the good link. Let me send the link one more time. Copy, open email, Microsoft Outlook. People, I'm not yet done with the rant. Well, what the? Okay, here like this. I'm going to send it to myself. Link here. Give me 2 seconds, people. Sorry about this. While I send the link to Jenna, and we're going to get into some fun discussion today. Here, let's try this. I gotta thank my sponsor for today's stream. Field of Greens, people. Field of Greens. The script that some people say is, it's tough to eat healthy. I don't always eat healthy, and that's why I need something to fill in for my unhealthy eating habits. I eat healthy. I can't always eat healthy, but I eat healthy, and it's a little known fact. You're supposed to have between 5 to 7 servings of raw fruits and vegetables a day. And most people don't have that, especially when you're traveling. My goodness, when I went to Texas and Vegas. But I do eat my 5 to 7 and maybe a little bit more doses or servings of raw fruits and vegetables every day. But that doesn't mean that I can't substitute a good healthy habit for what would otherwise be a bad unhealthy habit. I get tired in the afternoon. I get cranky in the afternoon, and I occasionally succumb to the unhealthy habit of having an energy drink. Whereas if I put that in cold water, stir it around, 1 spoonful is 1 serving of fruits and vegetables, it's a good, healthy alternative to my otherwise bad habits. And if you don't get your 5 to 7 daily doses of fruits and vegetables, fieldofgreens.com, it's not an extract and it's not a supplement. It's food. USDA organic. Can you see it right there? Oh, yeah, look at that. Focus on it. No, camera, don't lose it. USDA organic approved. A full serving of fruits and vegetables, antioxidant power, boosted immunity. It tastes good. Looks like you're drinking, highly nutrient-filled water, which you are. It tastes good. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Promo code VIVA will get you 15% off your first order. Mix them. I'll tell you what I did do once upon a time. I'm not mixing them, so that would be disgusting bull, not green bull. I did try to put Field of Greens in carbonated water, don't do that. Not because of the Field of Greens. It just it doesn't. It's not intended to be a carbonated drink. It didn't work. I drank it twice, as my grandmother used to say. The first and the last time, regular water. Put some ice in it. Put it in a juice box or a little container. It's delicious. It's healthy. And thank you, fieldofgreens.com. Promo code VIVA, 15% off. Okay. This camera, I intended to download the app so that I could stop doing this, but it's still tracking me. Nothing like having an AI camera tracking your every movement in your own house. We got Jenna Ellis in the house. We're going to talk about a few things tonight because a while back, it wasn't that long ago, there was what I think was a Twitter misunderstanding, because Twitter is meant for misunderstanding. It's meant for promoting strife, even among friends and allies, although I hate that word. Friends and ideologically aligned individuals. Jenna, I think, was at the receiving end of that misunderstanding, and it pertains to a benefit of the doubt that I dare say that she may no longer be giving. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but a benefit of the doubt that she may no longer be giving to Project Veritas in their treatment of James OKeefe. So Jenna's on for about 30 minutes because I think she's got something afterwards. I'm going to continue ranting and raving on Rumble and then on Locals. But in the meantime, what the hell am I talking about? I'm bringing Jenna on right now. Jenna, coming in 3, 2, 1. Ma'am, how goes the battle?
You know, it is as fierce as ever, and I wouldn't have it any other way because we have to stand up for truth. So always appreciate talking with you, and thanks so much. I agree with what you said about Twitter. It is rife for misunderstanding, and yet we all engage there because sometimes it's really fun, and, you know, we just move through it, and it's okay.
Sometimes you read insults and you're like, are they responding to me? But then they're responding to the object of your tweet. But then you think they're talking about you. Other times they are talking about it's fun, but it's a bad habit. But Jenna, look, I'll get one elephant out of the room before we get started. There's a lot of people who are angry with you, referring to you as a rhino, which I now know means Republican in name only. And I think I understand why, but do you understand why some people have turned on you on the social medias, misunderstandings aside?
Well, I think there's a wide variety of reasons why people suggest that anyone that comments on anything perhaps negative or critical about President Trump, or anything that is not wholly in their personal view, 100% ultra MAGA, however they would define it, then immediately you are cast into this, oh, you're a rhino, you never liked or supported President Trump anyway, and let's go and look at things that, you know, you said in 2015 or earlier to make our case. And so I think where we're at right now in such a polarized base is that a lot of people believe that anyone who either represented President Trump or worked for him in the past, or voted for him even, if you don't have this ultimate loyalty pledge to say you cannot criticize President Trump for absolutely anything, and you will not bend over backwards to support literally anything that he does, that makes you a rhino. I disagree with that. I've disagreed with that since before I represented him, during the time that I represented him, and of course after the fact that, and I haven't represented him in 2 years. I have always been about truth, fact-finding and fact-seeking, and also calling balls and strikes. It's very different when you are representing someone and you're representing their claims. And of course, I did represent Trump, and I was very happy to. I voted for him twice, very happily, and I will vote for whoever gets the GOP nomination. But I think this idea to suggest that we can't criticize anything that President Trump does, either what he says, his policy positions, anything like that, otherwise you're a rhino, that is just totally false. And that also misses the point of arguing things on the merits. And that's what I'm all about on my radio show, on my podcast, arguing things on the merits. I love and support President Trump, but I think that there are a lot of things that are very good about Governor DeSantis if he enters the race as well. And we should be talking about those things. And talking about them honestly and openly doesn't mean we're anti-President Trump. It means that we're good Americans. I have a loyalty to my country, and first and foremost to God, my Savior, over and above any political personality.
I'm going to bring up one comment in particular just to highlight what I think is also a bit of a trend here. I remember names on YouTube, and I know that I have not seen a comment from name that I can recall. And the comment is Deep State got to her. And this is where I also start to have my theories, which some people might call conspiracy theories. that I have no doubt there are people who come to sow discord among their ideological adversaries to create infighting, much like what's it called? COINTELPRO, for example. And so, having never seen that name, but then saying the deep state got to her so that everyone now is going to turn on Jenna Ellis, I'll take that with a grain of salt, and I'll sensitize the crowd who's watching to this. You were on, I forget how long ago it was now, when you were defending Trump with your career, with your soul, and with all of your belief. And you were, to many then, a hero. And I say, I'm not trying to lionize you. You were a hero to them then, to some of the people who are now calling you a rhino, because maybe there might be some resentment for the people who put their names, careers, professional licenses on the line to defend Trump, and who might, rightly or wrongly, but some might say rightly, feel that they are now being ignored in the pursuit of Trump's ascension to 2024. And so a number of the January 6ers who might have relied on Trump helping them, a number of the professionals who worked for Trump and are now facing all the disciplinary actions across the states might have a bit of resentment. And we did touch on it one time when you were on before, where they raised a lot of money for the defense of Trump, and then what happened to that legal defense of Trump and what happened to Trump defending those who defended him. Is there any bit of that resentment in you that some might attribute to why you might now be supporting DeSantis, because you feel slighted by Trump being left to fend for yourself?
Well, and that's a great question. And first, I'll say nothing about my relationship with President Trump or my representation of him or anything that has happened is influencing my perspectives now. There are, of course, ways that I have disagreed with him, even when I worked for him, or ways that I would have disagreed with him handling certain things, or things that I wish he would have done. I think we can all honestly say that. But where I think a lot of people are concerned, and they're saying, oh, well, she's now supporting DeSantis. Well, I've never come out and endorsed him. I think there's a lot of things that we should like about the freest state in the country and what Governor DeSantis has done. And what I don't like is seeing these personal attacks and these things that are genuinely false against Governor DeSantis out of this desire to simply support Trump. And so I'm trying to bring a little bit of equilibrium here. And so on one hand, everything that I'm talking about and saying publicly and on media and everything that I'm about has always been first and foremost about my Christian faith, about our country, and about supporting the best person possible for that job. It's no secret. I initially supported Ted Cruz. Then I heard in 2016, then I heard President Trump speak. I thought, wow, he's actually great. He's the man for the moment. And I started defending him on media because I genuinely believed that. Then I had the opportunity to work for him. And then you have a fiduciary obligation for that. And I do think that a lot of people have, for lack of a better word, lionized me. And don't lionize me. I mean, I have defended all of my clients to the best of my ability, and I do believe in election integrity. But I believe in the principles of what we're about and the principles of America first. And election integrity and defending that doesn't mean that then every single instance of what anyone or any candidate purports to advance as securing election integrity from the broader swath of the right means that then, because I believe in election integrity, I therefore have to champion their efforts as well. We can talk honestly about some of those things. And just because I champion President Trump, and now I'm also championing Ron DeSantis because I greatly respect what he did in Florida. And by the way, until 5 minutes ago, so did the whole MAGA base. There have been people who've deleted tweets that were openly supporting Ron DeSantis until they saw him as an adversary and opponent to Donald Trump. And I don't think that that is particularly intellectually honest. If you want to say, listen, I supported Ron DeSantis in Florida, but I'm supporting Trump for whatever reason, that is your right as an American voter to talk about that. But don't pretend that Ron DeSantis is somehow the worst governor in the world, or he is a rhino, or he is, Paul Ryan light, or anything like this. I mean, this is a man who's done a lot for his state. Talk about that honestly, and then persuade people why you are still voting for and supporting President Trump, whether or not DeSantis gets into the race. So that's my perspective. But that aside, I will say there are a lot of people who, and people I've talked to who worked for Trump, whether it's lawyers or advisors or others, who do have resentment and who are frustrated that he basically left a lot of us on the beach and on the field to say, okay, here's talking about the weaponization of government. I mean, over the last week, he has been railing against the weaponization of government. But where is that same ardent defense of everyone who worked for him and supported him when the government in a lot of different ways is being weaponized against Trump lawyers, against people who've been subpoenaed by various weaponizing committees like January 6th, against the January 6th prisoners? A lot of people have rightly asked the question, what is he doing for everyone who supported and championed him? And of course, I fall into that bucket, absolutely. But I would suggest that for everyone who is looking at that, and whether or not you like him or support him, that does go into a calculation, certainly. But that shouldn't be the overriding factor of whether you support President Trump now and into the future. But I think it can definitely play a role. And what I'm very interested to see, David, is moving forward when Ron DeSantis does announce how many people who previously worked for Trump are going to endorse and support Ron DeSantis based on some of these reasons. And I think a lot of people are going to. We already have Ken Cuccinelli, who formerly worked for Trump. You have Chip Roy. You have some of these others who have already said that they're endorsing Ron DeSantis. I haven't said that. I'm trying to call balls and strikes fairly. And what I want people to understand is that this doesn't mean that I'm a rhino just because I'm saying, hey, I like Ron DeSantis. It means that I'm now part of the media. One last thing, Kayleigh McEnany has come under some fire from some of these ultra MAGA crazies that are, and of course I'm speaking about Laura Loomer, who's the crazy, to say, well, why is she even doing an interview with Casey DeSantis around parental rights in education? And I'm thinking, because she works for a media outlet now. She's not the press secretary or spokesperson for Donald Trump. And people move on in their lives. They have different roles. That's okay.
Well, I'm just going to point out that I think you did say when DeSantis announces and not if DeSantis. I don't know if that was a Freudian slip. I'm joking. And I'm going to bring this up because there's two sides to this. There's a word she obviously needs to learn, loyalty, Andrew McKim. And I don't know if this statement is meant in respect. See, this is why Twitter is like, this is how fights start. Is this comment about loyalty of DeSantis vis-a-vis Trump because Trump allegedly made DeSantis a political career, so he owes it to Trump not to run against him? Or is this to suggest that you, Jenna, have not been loyal to Trump, despite having represented him loyally, faithfully, and suffered the sanctions and the consequences of such representation, which I'm going to discuss when you're not here, because I always say I'm not interested in getting someone to say something that's going to get them into more trouble down the line. There's a stipulation that you signed, which I'm going to break down because I saw Anna Kasparian talking about it on the Young Turks, and I had my own analysis when reading it, but I'll talk about that afterwards. So I don't know who the accusation of lack of loyalty is pointed at there, but what do you say to the argument that it would be backstabbing political disloyalty for DeSantis, whose career is owed to Donald Trump, to then run against him in the primaries for the presidency the next time around?
I would say that this is an open primary, and you can, as a voter, make that calculation and say, I'm going to support President Trump, and I believe that he has earned a second term. And you can make that calculation, but this is an open primary. If we are advocates genuinely for election integrity, which includes truth and fairness and a responsibility in this country to allow a free and fair election, then of course Ron DeSantis can run. Of course Nikki Haley can run. Of course Mike Pence, that I'm shocked he'd want to, but he can run. Anyone who qualifies under the U.S. Constitution can run. There is no loyalty pledge. Now, President Trump may be asking that as a way to get more people to vote for him. And I believe that there's a lot of us who believe that he has earned a second term. And I would love to see him have that second term and 4 more years. But what I'm unwilling to do is to say that somehow Ron DeSantis or people like me who are not just at every moment defending Trump only in this primary, I'll defend him where he deserves to be defended. Absolutely. I will talk about how much I love and respect him as a person and his family, all of those things. I will speak the truth on those things. I'll speak my opinions, but I'm not going to say that somehow I'm being disloyal as now a member of the media for talking openly and honestly about free and fair elections. And I'm certainly not going to say that someone like Ron DeSantis, even though, yes, maybe it's true that he got across the finish line because of President Trump's endorsement, but look at what he has done since then. He's the one that has built his reputation in the state of Florida. If he had done virtually nothing and hadn't made a name nationally for himself, then he probably wouldn't be getting such popularity. And I think that Piers Morgan was very apt in that interview, and what he said was the breakdown between Trump and DeSantis's relationship. He said this: "You got too popular." And I think that encapsulates everything, because Trump, I believe, would be lauding Ron DeSantis right now as the best governor in the world and the best governor in America, and saying, he's done so much, if Ron DeSantis was endorsing and voting for Trump. So does that really, then we have to step back and say, okay, does an endorsement change the facts of what he's done in office as governor? No. And so I don't think that this whole idea of a loyalty pledge is part of the fundamental fairness of how we conduct free and fair elections. I would love for the ultra MAGA base to defend Trump like we defended him in 2016, because he is the best candidate who has earned our vote. Don't go telling other people, oh, you're disloyal, you're a rhino now, you're whatever, if you don't go and slam a Ron DeSantis. Talk about what's good about your candidate and why you think that Donald Trump will win a general election and what he's going to do with the next 4 years. And I think that that's what America should be all about.
Now, I'm going to bring this one up because people are going to suggest that we need to forgive and forget all of the foibles of our political people, or I should say that our political people are perfect and therefore don't have any problems. I'll get to one in a second. Ginger Ninja, the freest state in the country, end quote. The same one that has raided thousands of gun owners' homes under DeSantis and taken their firearms, bypassing due process. Okay, Hans. Now, here's the problem. It's not, if someone wants to criticize Trump for having done certain policy mistakes when he was president, supporting shutting down schools at some point in time, Operation Warp Speed to produce the bestest jibby jab known to humankind. Look, you could play that game on both, and I don't think anybody's not going to fault DeSantis for his faults, one of which might very well be his response or lack of response to the political persecution, the weaponization of all things against Trump. Most recently, making the hush money payment joke, but then not coming out vigorously against the weaponization of all things prosecutorial against Trump. How do you defend DeSantis against that? Or what is your take on DeSantis's, in my opinion, lackluster response, but also one lacking foresight, because they're not just coming for Trump, they're going to come for DeSantis sooner than later. So he's not just defending Trump, he would have been defending himself. What's your position on his lackluster response?
Yeah, well, to the person who just commented, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't criticize Ron DeSantis for things that are genuinely criticism worthy. I have criticized DeSantis as well. I actually took a ton of heat from the conservative base for suggesting that signing that bill that removed Walt Disney Company's special privileges in the wake of their opposition to the parental rights and education bill was First Amendment retaliation, that I don't want to see a state government actor go down that road. I think that sets bad precedent. And I was criticized by everybody for, called a groomer, for crying out loud. I mean, where I was making a constitutional argument. I criticized Ron DeSantis for the tort reform bill that he just signed last week, that I don't think actually helps reform in the way that the legislature is suggesting. And I don't think that that was particularly wise. You can all go and read that and read my comments on my Twitter feed. So I'm not sitting here saying that Ron DeSantis is faultless, or that, the freest state in the nation means that he's done everything flawlessly. What I'm suggesting is that we need to have loyalty to principle over loyalty to just one person. I will criticize President Trump for anything that I think that he's not doing in the best way, and I will criticize Ron DeSantis in the same way. That's what we should be doing as Americans. Now, would I do that same thing if I am his spokesperson? Well, no, obviously, because then you're representing an individual and you have a fiduciary obligation to be part of their campaign. Now, does that mean that, sometimes I was saying things representing the campaign that I didn't necessarily agree with? Maybe, but that's part of the job. And, and you can have those debates privately, but then you go and you represent, this is what the principal is saying. And this is, and that's no different than any other organization. And so it's not about this flip-flopping. It's about understanding people's different roles. And to get to your question, David, about Ron DeSantis and his response. Well, here was my perspective, because we have lived the last 6 years, 6 years plus, with a head of the GOP, Donald Trump, who absolutely loves the media. He will go out and comment on everything that most presidents, most candidates, most politicians don't necessarily comment on or care about. I mean, he's going out there having opinions about Harry and Meghan. I mean, I have opinions too, and I think that's fun about Twitter, and I actually like seeing some of that stuff. But DeSantis is actually more in the mold of contrasting against Trump and more in the lane of what we would genuinely expect from a sitting governor, which is that he doesn't feel the obligation to weigh in immediately, go seek the attention of media outlets. He was conducting Florida's state business. And then when a question was asked to him in a press conference, he didn't shy away from it. He didn't obfuscate. He answered it directly. And whether or not, you want to cherry pick that one point about, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star, which, was a jab for sure. And he can take it. That's fine. It's interesting. Trump can attack DeSantis all he wants, but then DeSantis says one thing and somehow that's, the most terrible thing ever. I think that's ridiculous. But what DeSantis actually said was a 3 or 4 minute robust response that talked about how the weaponization of government should never happen, and how he has actually, in the state of Florida, been the only sitting governor on the GOP side currently who's actually removed a Soros-funded state attorney. And he emphasized that. And I think for the MAGA base, instead of looking at that statement for what it was, they are trying to go in and pick how he didn't more robustly defend Trump because somehow he has that obligation to. I think what he said was right in line with what you would expect from a governor. And I found no problem with it. I don't think he needed to say anything else.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, also, I think people are expecting a Trump-like response from DeSantis, and he's not a Trump-like candidate for good or for bad, depending on who you are. But you said something a while back, and you said when I was the spokesperson, would I say things that I potentially didn't believe in? Maybe that's the role you have to play. And then someone had asked this: why are you still not with Trump? And I don't know if I know the answer to this. I don't even want to lead into an answer. Is there any reason you can explain that is public knowledge?
Well, I mean, so my role ended on January 15th. And so when Trump left office, the Trump 2020 campaign no longer was an entity. So, everyone, their roles were ended. And at that point, I was never the attorney of record on any of our litigation, but I no longer had anything open in terms of representation. And so my role had concluded, much like you see, some of these consultants on other senatorial campaigns, for example, their roles conclude when the campaign is over. And so at this point, I'm not still with Trump, quote unquote, in terms of working for him, simply because my role ended. And I have chosen to move forward with Salem Media. I now have a radio show on American Family Radio Network that I actually love and appreciate the fact that I'm able to speak the biblical worldview and have a larger scope of a lot of thoughts and commentary and guests on politics and culture and a Christian perspective than just representing one campaign. And so, the question is also, of course, the follow-up is, would you go back and work for Trump? And, that's still an outstanding question. And, that remains to be seen. I would never say never, but, at the same time, I have a great relationship with the president. I just don't work for him. It's not at all true that I was fired by him, any of those things. My role simply ended when he left office, just like his role of president, unfortunately, according to the U.S. Constitution, also ended. And that's how it goes.
Hold on a second. Sorry, I just accidentally started play on a back screen. Okay, well, that's fair enough. And tribalism exists to some extent on I say on both sides, but it's a reflexive thing where people who politically support Trump, they have an urge, a compulsion, or it just happens that they want to demonize someone who comes out and supports someone who might run against Trump. I would prefer that people not engage in this type of behavior because it's sort of like the revolution eats its own. But on the I've also started using the ultra MAGA, but not as an insult, as an actual compliment of the right. Listening to Joe Biden and Hakeem Jeffries use ultra MAGA as though they think they're insulting anybody is rich coming from the guy who, literally
100%.
committed
And let me say this real quick too. I mean, I respect the people who are ardent defenders of Donald Trump. I mean, you have that right as a voter. What I'm simply suggesting is that people who want to support DeSantis or they want to wait and see, they have that right as well. And I think that we can appreciate that and argue things on the merits instead of taking these cheap shots to just say, well, you're disloyal or you're a rhino or all of these other names that don't adequately describe why their perspective may have changed or why they are undecided now. What I have said openly and publicly, because I'm so concerned about how fractured the base has become, is that I will support whoever is the GOP nominee, because ultimately we have a general election to win. And I want to see a Republican in the White House in 2024. And I will support that candidate because I care much more about either Trump or DeSantis or anyone else on the GOP ticket getting into the White House more than I want to see any of the Democrats retain that privilege.
Who would you like to see? Hypothetically, it is Trump. Who would you like to see as VP? And this might lead into our second subject.
I think that there have been a lot of speculation on that. What I would not prefer to see is a VP selection that is anything other than merit based. And I say that meaning I don't think that he has to pick a woman. I am a woman. I don't really care. I mean, look at Kamala Harris, who has been like the worst VP in history. It's actually embarrassing that she's a woman, right? I don't care about any of those things. And I honestly don't think that Donald Trump cares about any of those things. I think he's going to make his pick later on down the road. And so I don't know, and I don't even actually have any guess. I could tell you a couple of people I think it won't be. And I don't think it'll be Kari Lake for this reason. Because when you look at who he selected in 2016, Mike Pence, that was very calculated because Donald Trump at that time needed to win over the evangelical base, without whom he could not prevail in a general election. And for those of us who didn't really know him politically, he didn't have a track record to run on, he chose Mike Pence, who could speak to that base and get the votes that he needed. And so I think that anyone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Kari Lake or, some of these people that would fall into the ultra MAGA camp actually don't bring any new voters or any other voting bloc to him in a general election that wouldn't already be voting for him anyway. So I love MTG and I think she would be great. I just think based on Donald Trump's previous calculations and knowing how he looks at the political landscape, I think he's going to be more calculated in who he selects.
I'm going to make the prediction now. He's picking Kari Lake. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, might be a little too eccentric, even by the public palate, because I think she's widely misunderstood. I think I'll predict Kari Lake, although my bet is much more risky than your bet because you go by exclusion. I'm just going by inclusion. All right, and Kari Lake's recent victory out of Arizona. I mean, look, you're an American lawyer. I'm just a Canadian schnook who's learning as I go. What's your take in terms of being optimistic about the outcome, or does this find a way to get stifled through another legal mechanism?
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's the latter. And, I've received a lot of criticism for pushing back against Kari Lake specifically and about, some of these election integrity efforts. And what I'll say is, because everyone saw me as ardently supporting election integrity challenges in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And I would qualify that to say that, like you said in the very beginning, David, about the and allies, in that language, I think that was ultimately something that was hugely problematic in the aftermath of the 2020 election, was that there were so many other lawsuits and ideas and theories out there that it gave a lot of cover for the media to just focus on some of the more extreme and other filings that were not the Trump campaign that didn't lend to our favor, and our meaning, of course, my client at the time. And so, so with the election integrity challenges, I predicted then, and if people want to go back and listen to an interview I did with Daily Wire's Andrew Klavan, he asked me at the time if I thought that we would get an outcome that was for President Trump ultimately in terms of, all of these election challenges that the campaign filed. And I said at that point, it is going to be very difficult. And here's why, because, in the aftermath of litigation, when there are claims that are excluded on the basis of latches, there are claims that are excluded, it's always harder to go back and try to litigate after the fact than litigate up front. I think that there were some Trump campaign lawyers and RNC lawyers that didn't do their job up front. And didn't push back hard enough against some of these pretexts for universal vote by mail and some of these things that weren't litigated, and ultimately led to some of these claims being excluded in the aftermath of November. And so, I've been very honest with the American people as far as the possibility. I was the one who took a lot of heat for saying Trump is not going to get reinstated. That's just, there's litigation over that. That's not going to happen constitutionally. And so I have had, I think, a very clear track record of saying there's a difference between what we genuinely think should happen versus what legally is likely to happen. And so I think in the instance, and you and I talked about this on my show, I think the day before the day of Kari Lake's initial trial starting, and pointed out that the trial court dismissed 8 out of 10 claims and only left the 2 that required intent. And you and I both predicted probably not going to get a likely outcome. So yeah, she gets her day in court. So that takes that talking point off the table, but the judge isn't going to find in her favor, and he didn't. And so, as she's continued these appeals, my concern in this is that it will ultimately set actually negative precedent, because if this goes back, look, the Arizona Supreme Court dismissed the majority of her claims. They only kept 1. So keeping 1 alive is a good thing. If it goes back and signature verification actually happens, my prediction is that they will find some other way, the trial court, to dismiss that. Or if they actually look at signature verification, well, we've all heard this before. It's not enough to change the outcome of the election. So, okay, moving forward, elections have to be administered differently. Now, is that a good result? Yes. Is that something that she has run on basically in the last, in her, since her actual election? She's basically been so outspoken that we're going to, change this. I'm the duly elected governor, and everybody can have their opinions on that. But as far as the actual law, how the courts look at this, I don't think that they are going to ultimately give her a victory of ousting Hobbs and putting in Kari Lake. And I also want to say this real quick as well. A lot of people have pointed to that one tweet where I called Kari Lake a grifter. And I want to explain that a little bit, because a lot of people, think that I have some personal animus against her. I don't. I was actually one of the first to endorse her when she ran for governor. I would endorse her again for governor. There are some things that I disagree with her personally on, and that's fine. But what I've seen in terms of how her campaign after the fact has tried to fundraise without really giving all of that money to the legal defense, to me, is reminiscent of the RNC in 2020. And, grifting, a lot of people would call, you and I grifters, and they do, which is hilarious because we actually earn money. That's literally the opposite of grifting. Grifting.
In Britain, they call that grafting. Grafting means working hard. Grifting means causing, well, as far as my understanding goes, means causing drama so you can then try to exploit it. But I didn't know you took flack for that. I think this is the tweet. She hasn't and won't win any of her lawsuits. It's just fundraising at this point, i.e. grifting. I was one of the first that endorsed her and supported her as a candidate, but this will set back the conservative movement for election integrity. Instead of false personal attacks, I'm not paid for anyone, yada, yada, yada. I'm simply engaging the merits. The Viva Fry and I predicted this. I didn't see this tweet. I don't have my notifications turned on, but I am very reluctant to use the word grifter in general because I hate the way people abuse it. But anyway, that's the tweet.
Right.
Thus far, your prediction, at least on one claim, has not come to fruition. So if it goes back, look, if by some miracle it goes back and they actually implement signature verification with an actual substantive change of events, it'll be amazing. Thus far, I like the fact that Kerry has pushed it. There's nothing to be gained by not pushing it. You set bad precedent by also not pursuing it. So you might be setting up a situation where it's lose-lose. Set the bad precedent by not pursuing it, or set the bad precedent by pursuing it and getting a bad judgment. Thus far, there's still hope for one claim.
There is still hope for one claim. And if she actually wins on the merits of this claim, then I'll be the first to say, okay, great. Then, I was wrong in that prediction. And that's fine. I mean, but what I have seen so far in the grand scope of election integrity challenges has been that none of these have come to fruition and none of them have resulted in a win. And I think that some of these have been setting up the case to fail. And I'm not saying that she shouldn't have challenged this immediately. But again, the problem that I had was what you and I talked about on that episode that I promoted in that tweet, which is that when the trial court immediately dismissed 8 of the claims and then only kept the 2 with intent. My question is, and there may be a really good reason why her lawyers didn't do this, but my question is, why didn't they immediately file an interlocutory appeal and wait for the trial on the merits instead of moving forward saying, wait a second, you dismissed 8 of these other claims when you shouldn't have? But I feel like she has gone more toward the optics of these election integrity challenges than maybe the better legal course of action. And I'm not her lawyer, and her lawyers may have, a different view on this. But from where I sit, I don't see any of these resulting in anything, tangibly meritorious.
I'm going to bring this one up because good logic. Another one of the YouTube lawyers who's now going to be called a rhino. Jenna is spot on in her take that too many people demand a faulty oath or
guilty.
Oh, I thought that was a typo because I don't know what that word means. To an individual at the expense of constitutional values. I may lean toward Trump over DeSantis, but it's silly to cast Ron and his fans as evil rhino. Thank you, Good Logic. Everyone, check out Good Logic. Another one of the many YouTube lawyers who has now secured his place in the niche of YouTube law. I predicted at the time that she was going to fail because that judge, the initial trial judge, set up something where she could not possibly succeed. On the appeal, I'm flabbergasted that the en banc ruling overturned even one element of the claim. They didn't have to. They've done it. I don't see how the lower court is now going to find another way to dismiss. They dismissed it on latches. Ginger Ninja put this in there. Affirms latches. Are we talking to Ben Shapiro? And I don't know what that means. But the judge, the initial judge latches for signature verification. Well, if it goes back and the judge is going to bend over backwards with mental gymnastics to find another way to dismiss procedurally, I don't think the judge can do that. So maybe there will be something really good that comes out of this. We'll see.
Maybe, but here's the other thing that, in all of this, then people say, well, okay, if she's not filing these legal challenges, then what do you expect? Do we just, like you said, David, just do nothing and then set bad precedent in that way? Well, what I've also said on my show, and I actually had another lawyer in Arizona who saw all of this happen, and we were discussing this, the solution has to be legislative, because right now judges can kick out cases on latches, on all kinds of other things. And they're not necessarily required in most instances to take up election challenges, and they're finding all of these loopholes. And so if there is courage among Republican majority state legislatures that would actually comprehensively address election challenges and would have something like what Virginia has in some civil claims, like parallel to a rocket docket, and would say, okay, if there is a substantive claim that the administration of the election violated state law, well, first of all, we have to know what that is. So require the election administration to actually provide that data to all of the candidates. And then they have a certain time frame to then file their challenges that have to be heard on the merits. And none of this, going after the lawyers and all of these, types of, censures and all of these other, sanctions and other things against lawyers simply for bringing challenges. This has to be a legislative remedy, because even if Kari Lake wins in this one instance, this isn't going to comprehensively reform what we all advocate for. And I am an ardent advocate of election integrity. I just think we're not going to get this from the judicial branch. We need to get it from the legislative branch.
And this is why I have an expression in life that, experience doesn't always make us smarter. Sometimes it traumatizes us. And I say this with respect and non-judgmentally whatsoever. I think you might have been traumatized by your experience in advocating before the courts because of what happened to you. And we're going to see it when you're not here, where now that you now have, I say, maybe subconscious or maybe even a conscious aversion to the courts, because you see the way they don't just dismiss the claims, they go after the lawyers afterwards as well. So you say, we need to find another way of doing this. And therefore I'm not, I'm skeptical or critical or
I'll say
not
I'm cynical. I'm absolutely cynical based on how the courts treated the Trump campaign claims. And again, not all of the allies, whatever, that I can't speak to and all of that. And absolutely, I'm cynical that we will ever get a good meritorious ruling from the judicial branch on election integrity. Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. I like my expression because it doesn't mean people are dumber from experience. It means people get traumatized from experience and then learn the wrong lessons from it, which I might say, I recognize when I'm getting cynical, and then I have to take a step back from my own cynicism and say, Viva, meditate, Viva. All right, Jenna, last one, because, and I think we've worked our way into this one. Where you started getting a lot of flack was when you tweeted out something right after the Project Veritas debacle. And I think it's proven to be an abject debacle. We'll see who gets sued for how much and when. And there were a number of people, and I don't want to name anybody except you because you're here, who said, let's wait, take a little more time, see what's going on. To which Barnes said, anybody coming to Project Veritas's defense is I forget exactly what he said, but you felt like it was directed at you. And I said, well, I didn't see anything in your tweet defending Project Veritas. So you might have just been sensitive to what you thought might have been directed at you. But by the responses to the tweet, people did feel it was directed at you.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think he quote tweeted me. So,
well, I think so too. But he quote tweeted you. It was in response to your tweet, no doubt. I just read your tweet. I was like, okay, well, if someone's defending Project Veritas or the board of directors, then I didn't read your that tweet in particular as defending the board. But you certainly were giving them a benefit of the doubt, not defending them, which I said I've had enough. I've seen enough to not give them. They've eliminated any benefit of the doubt. Do you still feel the same way, Jenna, about what has transpired now that more evidence or none of the evidence is out there?
Really that none, because the board has not come forward, specifically Matt Tyrmand, who, has been a friend of mine for a number of years, has not come forward and actually given any sort of proof to their accusations against James O'Keefe. And, any of the substantive facts that we can make any other determination on. So, initially, when all of this came to the fore, what people don't know, and what I tried to, say initially was, I know James O'Keefe personally. I know Matt Tyrmand, who sat on the board, and he was getting, the main heat for this personally. He and I were consultants together on a Senate campaign in, the last midterm cycle. So I got to know him pretty well then. And I didn't want to make an immediate adjudication of what I didn't know just based on loyalty to one friend or another. I think that there is such a knee-jerk reaction across culture to simply defend our friends, which I think placed correctly is a good thing. We should defend our friends. But at the same time, we have to look for the facts first. And so when you have a situation where two friends are saying completely different things against each other. You might think of this in like a relationship breakup. If you're friends with, the guy and the girl, and they both say different things about the breakup, well, a lot of people will just say, well, I came into this relationship, with friends with, the girl, so I'm going to take her side. Well, is that really ultimately the ethical thing to do? I don't particularly think so, but I know a lot of people that would say that. And so a lot of people who knew James O'Keefe from what he's done on the media, and they probably don't even know him personally, immediately defended him instead of saying, well, wait, there might be a different side to this story. So I just said, hey, let's wait and see. That was taken as, totally out of context. But what I said was, let's wait and see. And right now, this has been about a month later. Nothing has come from the board. Nothing has come from Matt Tyrmand. Nothing has come. And I think just objectively, James O'Keefe has won the PR war. Absolutely. But I would say that at this point, how long does the benefit of the doubt extend to the other side when they're not talking at all? And so at this point, I would absolutely lend far more credence to James O'Keefe because he is the only one who's actually presented a side. But I definitely do not regret saying, let's wait and see, because the board could have come forward with something sooner, or there could be a reason still that they're not. Some people ask me, why aren't you talking about certain things in media? Well, there may be legal reasons why you can't. And, but at the same time, they should be openly saying, we can't for XYZ reason. And the fact that they've just been silent to me does not look good in the court of public opinion. And so, at this point, I would have to suggest that, we've waited long enough, and I would give this one to James O'Keefe.
Yeah, and I can appreciate someone saying, let's wait and see, especially if you have friends on both sides. I consider myself of having no friends on either side. I met James a couple of times. I think I know him relatively well. It might be presumptuous for me to call him a friend, but I think we like each other and trust each other. But I say, like, when anybody does something massive like that, they better have massive evidence and not hold on to it for too long. Like when they raided Mar-a-Lago, I was like, okay, well, let's wait and see what evidence they have. It's like, no, if you're going to raid the president's home, you better show us that evidence, maybe even contemporaneously, if not in advance. You're going to oust James O'Keefe from the entity that he created. It's him. You'd better have that evidence on hand immediately after, not some vague accusations and then expect us to wait. So I was already past the point of waiting to see, because maybe there is good evidence out there, but when I didn't see it within 12 hours or even contemporaneously, I knew which side I was going with based on what I already knew about the parties.
And I think that's fair, actually. I mean, I think that's fair. I was willing to give them a little bit longer, but I think that's an entirely fair position as well.
Jenna, I've kept you for longer than you said you had with me. Thank you I always take that as the ultimate compliment. Jenna, not that anybody doesn't know where to find you already, and I'll put the links in the pinned comment. Where can people find you before I head over to Rumble and address that which I would not feel comfortable addressing in front of you, but relating to you?
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And you can follow me, of course, on Twitter at Jenna Ellis ESQ and across all platforms, including Truth Social. And then the JennaEllisShow.com is my podcast where, David, you have been a guest many times, actually, and I'm always happy to chat with you. And then, of course, my radio show is on the American Family Radio Network. It's Jenna Ellis in the morning from 8 to 9 Eastern, and you can find that on afr.net or on Twitter at Jenna Ellis AM.
Pregnant woman. I want to know what type of sandwich it was. It had to have been good if James O'Keefe is going to snatch it from the hands of an 8-month pregnant woman, that monster. Jenna, thank you very much. And for anybody who doesn't know, I'm getting into your stipulation, which is what the sanctions you faced or the repercussions you faced in Colorado. And I'll explain why I wait for you not to be here in order to address it.
Sure.
Jenna, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good day. All right, people, that was good. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sitting there listening to the Young Turks just to show you that I listen to both sides in order to know what everybody's saying, because it's not because I disagree with them pretty much all the time that I'm going to disagree with them all the time. I was listening to the Young Turks, and they were talking about how Jenna Ellis had just admitted to lying. Jenna Ellis admitted to lying in the representations that she made when representing Donald Trump in the election contest in 2020. And I was like, not that I start off by immediately distrusting anything that come out of the mouths of any of the Young Turks, but I do. I went and verified it, and we're going to go over that stipulation, which she faced sanctions, ethical complaint, or whatever, in Colorado, the bluest of the blue states, as far as I can tell. We're going to go over that when we get to Rumble, which is where we're going to go right now and carry on, because there's a lot more to talk about today. That CNN being racist, no, CNN saying it's racist. If you use a meme of a black person and you're not black, that's it. That's it. Doesn't even matter how you identify. Okay, everybody, head on over to Rumble. Did I forget anything here? No. I'll thank my sponsor one more time, fieldofgreens.com. My mother-in-law is coming to stay with us for 3 weeks in Florida. That's going to be fun. I don't even know why I just elected that in. Oh, yeah, that's right, because I think I just heard the door coming. Now my mother-in-law is going to come in and live in my office for 3 weeks. So, all right, move on over to Rumble, and we're going to look at this, weaponizing of all things. Department of Justice, professional bodies, professional licensures, everything weaponized. Politics ruins everything. Full stop. Ending on YouTube. Head on over to Rumble, people. I will see you there in 3, 2, 1. Booyakasha!